Hello, Spooky Reads fans. Tonight I am here to talk about Ray Bradbury. Now, Ray Bradbury has written a lot of things that really creeped me out. And, things like The Veldt. Do you remember that one? It's the one about the smart house with the nursery where the walls become a little too real and maybe it doesn't end so well for the parents. And A Sound of Thunder. That's the one with a time travel agency, and you could time travel and go get to shoot a dinosaur that was about to die or something like that. But then a guy steps on a butterfly, giving a whole different meaning to the butterfly effect. And Skeleton, which is a little more directly horror. Yeah, he's written some really great creepy things. But for people my age, there's nothing better than Something Wicked This Way Comes. Now, all of us Gen X children were heavily influenced by the movie, right? But I also read the book several times, and I read it again quite recently, actually. So I'm going to read to you a little bit from one of my favorite parts. I always loved the carousel. Carousels, even before Ray Bradbury got a hold of them and used them to, send people back in age and time, carousels are wonderful and at the same time a little creepy. It's something about I think, the live animals being captured in stillness and yet still moving. I don't know. Carousels always delight me and kind of creep me out at the same time. So this is a scene from fairly early on in this very short book. It's short enough that even calling it a novella is probably an exaggeration. And I'm reading it on my Kindle, so it's 23% into the book. I don't know what page that is. But this is one of the first times they see the carousel in action. Will looked down at the billion footprints left in the sawdust on the empty midway, and suddenly it was a lot closer to midnight than to noon. I'm going home. Sure, Will, go on. Mirror mazes, old teacher ladies, lost lightning rod bags, lightning rod salesmen disappear, snake pictures dancing, unbroken merry-go-rounds, and you want to go home. Sure, old friend Will. So long. My dogs are very excited about that part. Will started down the tree and froze. All clear? Cried a voice below. Clear, someone shouted at the far end of the midway. Mr. Dark moved, not 50 feet away, to a red control box near the merry-go-round ticket booth. He glared in all directions. He glared into the tree. Will hugged. Jim hugged the limb, tightened into smallness. Start up! With a pop, a bang, a jangle of reins, a lift and downfall, a rise and descent of brass, the carousel moved. But, thought Will, it's broke, out of order. He flicked a glance at Jim, who pointed wildly down. The merry-go-round was running, yes, but it was running backward. The small calliope inside the carousel machinery rattle-snapped its nervous stallion shivering drums, clashed its harvest moon cymbals, toothed its castanets, and throatily choked and sobbed its reeds, whistles, and baroque flutes. The music, Will thought. It's backwards, too. Mr. Dark jerked about, glanced up as if he had heard Will's thought. A wind shook the trees in black tumults. Mr. Dark shrugged and looked away. The carousel wheeled faster, shrieking, plunging, going roundabout back. Now Mr. Cougar, with his flaming red hair and fire-blue eyes, was pacing the midway, making a last check. He stood under their tree. Will could have let spit down on him. Then the calliope gave a particularly violent cry of foul murder, which made dogs howl in far counties, and Mr. Cougar, spinning, ran and leaped on the back, whirling universe of animals who, tail first, head last, pursued an endless, circling night towards an unfound and never-to-be-discovered destination. Hand-slapping brass poles, he flung himself into a seat, where with his bristly red hair, pink face, and incredible sharp blue eyes, he sat silent, going backward, back around, the music squealing swift back with him like in-sucked breath. The music, thought Will. What is it, and how do I know its backside first? He hugged the limb, trying to catch the tune, then hum it forward in his head. But the brass bells, the drums, hammered his chest, revved his heart, so he felt his pulse reverse, his blood turn back and perverse thrust through all his flesh, so he was nearly shaken free to fall. So all he did was clutch, hang pale, and drink the side of the backward-turning machine. And Mr. Dark alerted the controls on the sidelines. It was Jim who first noticed the new thing happening, for he kicked Will once. Will looked over, and Jim nodded frantically at the man in the machine as he came round the next time. Mr. Cougar's face was melting like pink wax. His hands were becoming doll's hands. His bones sank away beneath his clothes then shrank down to fit his dwindling frame. His face flickered going, and each time around he melted more. Will saw Jim's head shift, circling. The carousel wheeled, a great back-drifting lunar dream, the horses thrusting, the music in-gassed after, while Mr. Cougar, as simple as shadows, as simple as light, as simple as time, got younger and younger and younger. Each time he wheeled to view, he sat alone with his bones, which shaped like warm candles burning away to tender years. He gazed serenely at the fiery constellations, the children-inhabited trees, which went away from him as he removed himself from them, and his nose diminished, and his sweet wax ears reshaped themselves to small pink roses. Now no longer 40, where he had begun his back-spiraled journey, Mr. Cougar was 19. Around went the reverse parade of horse, pole, music, man, become young man fast rendered down to boy. Mr. Cougar was 17, 16. Another and another time around, under the sky and trees, and Will whispering, Jim counting the times around, while the night air warmed to summer heat by friction of sun-metal brass. The passionate back-turned flight of beast wore the wax doll down and down, and washed him clean with still stranger musics until all ceased. All died away to stillness. The calliope shut up its brassworks, the ironmongery machines hissed off, and with a last faint whine, like desert sands blown back up Arabian hourglasses, the carousel rocked on seaweed waters and stood still. The figure seated in the carved white wooden sleigh chair was very small. Mr. Cougar was 12 years old. So if you've never read Something Wicked This Way Comes, you are missing out. It takes, I think, it single-handedly changed how people felt about carnivals and made them so creepy and a bit threatening. And, how better a villain could you have than a man named Mr. Dark, right? Love it. Ray Bradbury understood the heart of Halloween. Happy reading. Happy Halloween.